Today I'm going to tell you the story of the time that Google invested an insane sum of money to create YouTube's biggest parkour channel. The exact amount I will disclose later on in the video. The channel quickly became one of the most popular channels in parkour at the time. Despite this, the channel suspiciously disappeared with no explanation at all. This is the confusing story of why Flow failed. To tell this story properly, we need to go back 8 years to 2012, all the way back to when dubstep dominated the music industry.
I thought it was an earthquake. I went outside and I looked and I realized it was bass.
A South Korean singer said the word Gangnam Style and for some reason the world went into a frenzy.
What about C4 style?
But most importantly, in the parkour and freerunning world, Urban Free Flow had just died. Urban Free Flow was the place to watch parkour on YouTube. After Urban Free Flow's death, there was a void in the parkour community. All the little Billy boys of the world were saying, "Mom, where can I watch some dope backflips on YouTube?" "I don't know, son, go eat your vegetables." But what point would there be in Billy eating his vegetables if he couldn't watch backflips on YouTube? So after Urban Free Flow's death, one little known company called Google saw this as an opportunity to make some bank.
I'm a graduate intern here at Google. There's volleyball nets and colorful umbrellas.
At this time in 2012, Google were recognizing YouTube's potential to grow. But there was a problem. You see, the general public saw YouTube as nothing more than a website to watch funny cat videos on. So to change that perception, it was going to cost a lot of money. One day, after an intense volleyball session, the trendy internet boys at Google made the decision to invest a whopping $100 million plus an additional $200 million marketing budget into a secret project known as the YouTube Original Channel Initiative. It doesn't really roll off the tongue very well. This very expensive experiment was intended to rebrand YouTube away from its image of funny cat videos and more towards an image similar to Netflix or traditional television. YouTube channels were created for celebrities such as Pharrell Williams, Shaquille O'Neal, and Madonna. Word had quickly spread amongst the media industry of Google's $300 million jackpot. And along came a company by the name of Base 79. At this time, Base 79 had been managing a freerunner by the name of Tim Shieff. Tim was starting to turn into somewhat of a celebrity in the mainstream world. After appearing in a number of high-budget music videos, as well as guest appearances on television, Tim was the face of parkour. After a quick back and forth between Tim and Base 79, the idea emerged to create YouTube's largest parkour network. And with that, Flow was born. But there was a catch. In order to win the funding for Flow, Tim would need to create 24 hours of parkour content for the year. Now, you might be saying,
"Hey Jimmy, that's nothing. Your Instagram stories are 24 hours long."
Well, to put it into perspective, that's 1,440 minutes. And back in 2013, most YouTube videos were like 3 or 4 minutes long. At that rate, the channel would have to make 360 videos in a year, all while somehow remaining interesting, original, and not lazy. So, with this mammoth challenge laid in front of him, Tim put a team together. Tim turned to the one man who could make this happen, Giles Longley. Giles, who would later go on to work on the critically acclaimed Roof Culture Asia film. I don't know if it's critically acclaimed, it just sounded better when I said it, but it was a great film. Had already made a name for himself in the parkour world as being one of the top filmmakers. But being a good filmmaker wasn't going to be enough. Giles was going to need to uproot his whole life and travel around the world with Tim, whilst filming and editing videos almost every single day of the year. But for Giles, this was an opportunity of a lifetime. At this time in 2013, no one in the parkour world had successfully made a living off of nothing but parkour video content. If the two pulled this off, they would be living out not only their childhood dreams, but the dreams of nearly every young freerunner around the world. The big day arrived. Tim had been invited to fly over to Cannes in France to pitch with Base 79 for part of the Google fund. As Tim walked into the room, he quickly realised the weight of the situation. Sitting across from him were the world's top YouTube networks. All of them with their own big bright ideas on what they would do with their slice of the tasty $300 million pie. And all of them with their own reasons why Google should pick them. What chance did Tim really have? Parkour and freerunning are niche sports with really small audiences, and they were competing against the likes of Pharrell Williams. Parkour just surely couldn't compete against that. Tim's name was called out. He stood up and walked into a room to present his vision to become the biggest parkour and freerunning hub on the internet. To create a platform that would bring the global parkour community together, that would promote talented athletes, as well as making timeless video content that would be treasured within the community forever. Tim held his childhood dreams in his hands as the tech giants at Google stared down at him. The presentation ended, Tim and the team left Cannes, and they went back to the UK to return to their normal lives. And then, Tim was called into a meeting with Base 79. Oh snap, the boy gonna get his money. Flow had won the funding from Google. Flow had been awarded a whopping £250,000 to create YouTube's biggest parkour channel. This £250,000 was to be used to pay Tim, Giles, any athletes that worked with them, and also any travel expenses they had for the year.
Yeah, that was a big day. That was a good moment. I remember being down by South Bank somewhere, and they told us, and we shook hands on it, and my manager was there with me as well, Seb Murphy. It was great, man. It was exciting, but then of course the pressure of what was to come was there, but I had Giles and we got through it, but it was exciting to have that kind of responsibility.
With the weight of this project resting on their shoulders, the Flow team eagerly got to work on making content. In January 2013, the Flow channel was officially launched, with none other than grime legend JME. What? Okay, JME and Tim were friends. Nonetheless, this was massive. The channel started with a bang. Flow wanted to tell the world that they were serious, albeit a little bit awkwardly.
For me, I can hear an echo of my voice. That is weird. Right.
As well with this weirdly depressing parkour video. But nonetheless, Flow was launched. After the launch, the real challenge had begun. To create 24 hours of content, the team needed a plan. Tim and Giles decided on 5 different series to create. The range of content covered interviews with famous parkour athletes, a parkour travel show, parkour POVs, way back when GoPros were terrible, parkour interactive games, and the infamous Flow Show, which was a weekly roundup of the best parkour content in the scene. This period of time led Tim and Giles around the world creating full-length documentaries on parkour. It was just them two, on the road with a camera and a story to tell. This journey found them speaking to the founders of the sport, as well as visiting Hong Kong's incredible rooftops with Jason Paul, and all the while creating some of the best memories of their lives. The highs, the lows, the stress, the reward brought Tim and Giles to be the closest of friends. Everything was going great, but something was missing. With Google's incredible investment, an incredible amount of work was being asked of them. Despite Flow's best efforts, the content was just missing a feeling of being organic. If you look at a team like Stora, who started out as friends organically documenting the stories of their lives, Tim and Giles, however, were just thrown into the deep end needing to make 3 videos a week. The channel just had too much pressure and not enough time to grow organically and find its own personality. The sheer quantity of content the team were needing to make just didn't give them enough room to really be artistic with all of their videos. On top of that, Base 79 would require that the videos had this TV-like format, with stock intros for each video. This would find Tim and Giles creating an incredible film, and then having to slap some cheesy intro on the beginning of every single video. Tim himself put it very well.
Of course, it feels like any artist that gets an album contract for like 4 albums, it just takes away their creativity because they have to do it, whereas the artists that do it because the love is there and they do it when they feel it and the time they feel it, they're always the best artists, you know, like the way Jeremy rolls. It didn't have the same organicness of like Storm Freerun Volume 1, you know, something like that.
However, despite all this, the channel still grew. And very quickly, within a year, the channel hit 100,000 subscribers, and then quite quickly after that, 200,000. This was some very impressive growth. And within the parkour community, the channel had become recognised as the hub for parkour content.
100 people turn up off a day's notice to this place is
It's astounding to us to see the levels that Parkour was getting to. It took about 10, 15 minutes to shake everyone's hand.
On the outside, everything appeared like Flow was doing really well. But then something happened. In July of 2014, Base 79 sold their company to Rightstar for a whopping £50 million. Rightstar, who would later be renamed to Brave Bison, who have since become the biggest YouTube network outside of America. Now, Flow wasn't dealing with a small startup company. They were dealing with a giant corporation. With this new ownership, there was a shift inside the company. You see, Base 79 understood community. They knew it would take time to create a culture and a community, and for Flow to find its feet. However, Rightstar had a different attitude. Rightstar were very stats driven. Rightstar didn't care about the idea of making a community. They cared about their bottom line. And to make matters even worse for Giles and Tim, it was at this time that Google very quietly terminated the $300 million investment into the YouTube Original Channel Initiative. I hate saying that. The initiative had been written off as a failure. This very expensive lesson taught YouTube one thing, and that was, to quote them, homegrown YouTube creators are far more likely to craft successful channels than traditional media stars. And it learned the average YouTube viewer prefers a channel loaded with content over one that functions like a TV channel.
I mean, I could have told you that. You didn't need to spend $300 million on it, Jesus.
I think the last sentence there is the most important. Flow just felt more like a TV channel than a YouTube channel. YouTube's initiative had relied all too heavily on celebrities and not YouTubers. And when they did approach YouTubers like Tim, they pushed them into this TV style format, and it just didn't land with the YouTube audience. With this absolute bomb dropped onto the YouTube initiative program, Rightstar had a decision to make. Do we carry on funding Flow? And simply put, Flow just wasn't bringing in the kind of numbers that they had hoped. Despite 200,000 subscribers in little over a year and 23 million channel views, this just wasn't enough for Rightstar. With little to no explanation, Rightstar pulled the plug on Flow. Overnight, the team went from living the dream to crashing back down to reality. And for Tim and Giles, their childhood dream was over. And with that, Giles and Tim left Flow. Without Flow there to keep them together, both of them went their separate ways and continued with their lives. When I asked them, do you miss this period of your life? Well, here's how they responded.
Man, not to reminisce on that. That year I spent more time with Giles than any other human, and we connected, and I sort of missed that. But I love seeing what he's doing now with his stuff and what he's gone on to do because of his work ethic that he put into that, and it would never have been possible without Giles, so just make sure you mention.
Honestly, I quite miss just hanging out with Tim. I used to see Tim almost every single week, at least, for the Flow show. He's definitely a character, and there's people have got a lot of opinions of him, but he was an incredibly driving force. Well, where Flow got to, it wouldn't have got anywhere close without Tim. He was the person that sort of kept that train rolling.
In little over a year, Flow had achieved 250,000 followers. Given some more time and a chance to really find itself, who knows what Flow could be today. Tim and Giles could still be travelling around the world, telling stories and giving more young athletes an opportunity to live off of the sport they love. With Tim and Giles out of the picture, that leaves one question. What happened to Flow? For some reason that I'll never know, Flow remained adamant they needed to keep up with the Flow show. I don't know why they loved that thing so much. They ended up replacing Tim with just some random guy who no one had ever heard of. He lasted a few episodes before Flow slipped off the face of the earth with no explanation as to what had happened. This came as a bit of a shock to the rest of the parkour community. Flow really had established themselves as the parkour hub, and with the death of Flow and the rise of Instagram, there just wasn't this community for parkour on YouTube anymore. Instagram has had a very controversial effect on parkour. This is a topic I plan to cover in depth in another video, so make sure you subscribe for that. But as for Flow, nowadays the channel just lies dormant without having a single upload in the last 4 years. The Facebook page was later sold as a weed community page. I mean, who saw that coming? Which was called Blunt Community. Then presumably they felt that that image wasn't going to work, and have since gained 12 million followers as a sort of viral video page and political propaganda page, which is now called Bluntly. Now it's 2020, and it seems no one has stepped up to fill the void of a parkour hub online. Tim and Giles have both gone on to do other incredible things. Giles has since set up a parkour clothing brand called the Motus Projects, who have made some incredible videos over the years. And as for Tim, judging by the comments and the DMs that I received, there seems to be quite an appetite for me to tell his full story. So if that is something you want, let me know in the comments. For now though, be sure to check out my last documentary on the strange story of urban free flow. That is linked below. Subscribe to my channel and leave a thumbs up. Catch you in the next one.